Hey friends, Sean from SGTreport.com here with a video about the war on truth, which is actually a war against God. Hang with me and I'll prove it. But first, this video is brought to you by our friends at GreenMed. GreenMed is the world's first ERC20 Ethereum token-backed application enabling customers to purchase legal marijuana using their debit or credit cards. Now look, I don't use marijuana personally, but for those that do, they've been forced to deal in cash, which is very inconvenient and dangerous for the dispensaries, and medical marijuana sales are projected to grow from 4.7 billion in 2016 to nearly 14 billion in 2020. If you want to be a part of this multi-billion-dollar industry, then you'll want to check out the GreenMed token sale, which is open right now. And through the end of this week, the week of September 4th, you'll get a 40% bonus on all the tokens you purchase. For more information and to participate in the ICO, visit greenmed.io. Okay guys, I recently did an interview with author Brad Olson, and he mentioned a term to me which I found very interesting. He mentioned neo-fascism. The classical definition of fascism being that when corporations get in bed with government and essentially run the government through the revolving door of fascism, that is the classical definition. And Brad pointed out to me that neo-fascism is when CEOs or people in charge of these corporations become the government. And of course that is now what we face with the likes of people like Eric Schmidt, the executive chairman over at Alphabet, Sundar Pichai at Google, and Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, not to mention the leadership at Monsanto, Pfizer, Merck, etc. We're going to get into this here in a second. I want to start with this clip from Eric Schmidt, the executive chairman of Alphabet, who famously said this.
My own view on most of this sort of extremist things, as well as fake news in general, is that it's essentially a ranking problem. Right? We're very good at detecting what's the most relevant and what's the least relevant. It should be possible for computers to detect malicious, misleading, and incorrect information and essentially have you not see it. We're not arguing for censorship. We're arguing just take it off the page. Right? Put it somewhere else. Make it harder to find.
Yeah, make it harder to find, and that's exactly what they're doing, because Google is now the arbiter of all information on planet Earth. At least that's what they would like to be. And as Sundar Pichai famously said, there is no room for fake news at Google. So not only are they demonetizing websites and YouTube channels that speak truth, or at least speak opposition to power, they're demonetizing, they're burying the search results so that information can no longer be found. In fact, Eric Schmidt recently said that there should be only one answer.
Help us understand where's the future of search going.
Well, when you use Google, do you get more than one answer? Of course you do.
Yeah, of course.
Well, that's a bug.
Yeah.
We have more bugs per second in the world.
There
because
are.
we should be able to give you the right answer just once.
Google gets it wrong because there's a multiplicity of answers on any given topic. And let's go down the list of those topics. I found it fascinating that I found this from the National Geographic, this cover from 2015 March, The War on Science. My video is titled The War on Truth. So we have a mainstream Mockingbird publication like the National Geographic publishing a magazine on which the cover are these phrases: climate change does not exist, evolution never happened, the moon landing was fake, vaccinations can lead to autism, and genetically modified food is evil. Now, of course, they're trying to be ironic, and on the cover is shown this worker adjusting a diorama of the moon landing at the Kennedy Space Center. It makes one believe if the CIA's mission to have everything the American people believe be fake is actually a real strategy, because for the National Geographic to claim that the war on science is when people say climate change does not exist, of course precludes the argument that climate change may not be man-made, but I don't even want to get into that. In this video, let's talk about some of these others. Evolution never happened. Well, the Big Bang is as much a leap of faith as believing that God spoke the universe into creation. And I want to share this video clip with you from my interview with James Perloff. The elite don't want you to know God is real. Here's the proof, in which Perloff dismantles Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species, which was written a couple hundred years ago. So if you want to talk about the war on science, let's talk about the science, which is drastically better now than it was in the 1800s. You know, they used to believe, this guy believed that the smaller things got, the simpler things got. And the exact opposite is true, James. They've now realized that the smaller they go onto the quantum level, there's evidence of complexity so magnificent that it speaks to a designer, and many atheist scientists have even come out to say just that. So I want to ask you, what is wrong with Darwin's On the Origin of Species that the establishment still bitterly clings to as a piece of faith, just like they cling to the Big Bang, which is nothing more than a theory? What's wrong with On the Origin of Species?
Well, we're going to present 4 proofs that it's wrong, and then we're going to take 2 proofs that the evolutionists use and show where they're flawed. And I think the best place to start is at the beginning of life. You know what, Sean? I want you to put a graphic up on the screen because I think it's important we give our audience a 1-minute refresher on what the theory of evolution says.
Can do. What
what the theory says is that life began in the ocean billions of years ago when the right chemicals formed our single-celled ancestors by chance. And then these single-celled creatures began to evolve into multicellular creatures, and they became the first sea-going invertebrates. Invertebrates, a creature without a backbone like a jellyfish. Then the invertebrates evolved into fish, and then fish yearned to come ashore, and so their fins started to evolve into legs. And they became the first amphibians, which are creatures, of course, that can go on land or water like a frog. And then amphibians evolved into reptiles evolved into mammals, and then eventually within the class of mammals, you had these ape-like creatures who evolved into man. And that's the theory in a nutshell. It might be taught a little differently from one school of thought to another, but that's it. And that's basically what your kids are taught in school.
I'll pause it there. You guys can listen to that entire interview because obviously it's a leap of faith to believe that man evolved from the primordial sludge. And in fact, even Richard Dawkins, at the end of a documentary directed by Ben Stein, admits that science believes that perhaps life was seeded here by aliens, because Richard Dawkins, being a hardcore atheist, can't possibly reveal that potentially God spoke it all into existence, as the Bible claims.
What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe. Well, but that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God.
Richard Dawkins is more apt to make the jump that aliens seeded life here. So let's go back to that National Geographic cover, The War on Science. The moon landing was fake. Never ever question NASA, guys. Google's Eric Schmidt would like it very much that when you Google anything regarding the moon landings, you only get the official NASA version of events. So let's go to my interview with Brad Olson, in which I make the case that NASA themselves says that they lost the technology to return to the moon and cannot prove we were ever there because they also lost the telemetry data. NASA themselves says we no longer have the technology to go to the moon.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
They destroyed that technology. and it's a painful process to get it back again. But it doesn't end there, friends. It only gets more satirical, because now they claim that they lost all of the data that would prove they ever went in the first place. Again, they say they lost all the telemetry data.
I haven't seen anything that indicates the telemetry data is even in existence, and as I said, even if we had it, we don't have the machines to play it back.
But your own research has shown the telemetry data is missing.
That's right.
The telemetry data is missing. Now, Eric Schmidt and Sundar Pichai don't want any information about those facts coming up in Google search results, because Eric Schmidt says that there should only be one answer, and it should be the right answer. So the question, dear friends, is, according to the New World Order, and that's what we're talking about here. When we talk about Google, Big Brother, censorship of information, we're talking about the New World Order answer. And Eric Schmidt would like the New World Order answer, the right answer, to be one answer, and that's NASA's official version of results. Now let's go back to that National Geographic cover. Vaccinations can lead to autism. Well, what a preposterous claim the National Geographic would have you believe. Except for, if you want the hardcore truth, you might want to watch a documentary called Vaxxed, From Cover Up to Catastrophe. In 2013, biologist Dr. Brian Hooker received a call from a senior scientist at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, who led the agency's 2004 study on the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine and its link to autism. That is the MMR vaccine, guys. And the scientist, Dr. William Thompson, confessed that the CDC had omitted crucial data in their final report that revealed a causal relationship between the MMR vaccine and autism. Over several months, Dr. Hooker records the phone calls made to him by Dr. Thompson, who provides the confidential data destroyed by his colleagues at the CDC. Now, if you're a parent like I am, that may be information you want to know before you choose to vaccinate your children. But of course, in California, thanks to criminal Governor Jerry Brown, you don't even have that choice, because the fascist, tyrannical state government in California is forcing parents to vaccinate, whether you homeschool, private school, or otherwise. And there is absolutely nothing more tyrannical than a state-sponsored needle that you're just supposed to trust. And we'll conclude with genetically modified food is evil. Look, I don't even need to get into this one. Monsanto wants to control the world's food supply by altering it genetically on a cellular level and inserting their Roundup poison into the plants so that the plants are Roundup resistant. The evidence suggests that consuming Monsanto's Roundup is not good for you, it's not good for your gut, and it's not good for our environment. The cover of this magazine, as a worker adjusts a diorama of the quote-unquote moon landing at the Kennedy Space Center, is really absolutely hilarious. The National Geographic and the war on science. It's really a war on truth. And we in the alt media, the truth media, are the last line of defense between Orwell's 1984 having blanket authority over society, where lies are truth and war is peace, versus humanity having access to the truth. But if it's left up to people like Mark Zuckerberg, Sundar Pichai, or Eric Schmidt at Alphabet, that won't be an option for very much longer.
We should be able to give you the right answer just once.
For real news, guys, visit us at sgtreport.com. Thanks for listening. God bless.
We live in the age of deception and betrayal, Sean. And once people recognize that and they reorder their lives accordingly to do their very best to protect their families from the onslaught that's coming at them politically, economically, socially, then I think they'll be better off.